Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, I'll be showing you the details of how Power BI works, from connecting or cleaning data, creating calculated columns, creating different measures, whether implicit or explicit measure, and I'll go back to discussing a little bit about building data models, as well as showing you some examples of how data tables and lookup tables are used in Power BI. So at first, you need to connect to your data source. And in our example, we make use of Excel workbook. We click connect, and then we point to our source workbook, which is SRP. And then the next screen will show you the different worksheets that are inside the workbook. So we will select all of these worksheets and then load. You will notice once it loads that there might be some errors, or if there are none, then you can proceed with your data exploration in Power BI. So at the moment, it is still loading. So if you can remember, we have discussed that you can load data in Power BI through Power Query, and at the same time you can also load data in Excel through Power Query. But in Power BI, Power Query is built in. In Excel, Power Query is an add-on or a plugin. So as you can see from this screen now, we have an error. Okay, so you can check the error by clicking View Error. And perhaps if you want to check on some pending changes, so if you have prior changes, you can discard or you can apply changes. So if we try to check our Power Query editor, you can see that in this case, the error in the worksheet PSIO, IPOP, there is an error in one row. So when we check this particular row, you will notice that there are some missing values in some of the data points, such as this. Sex is null and MMDOB is null, the date of birth is null. So from this particular row, you will suspect that this one is an erroneous row. So you can remove this particular row. And as you can see in Power Query, all of the things or the steps executed are recorded, so you can automate and perhaps replicate or undo what you have done. So once you are okay with that, you can close and apply. All right. So when you check our data from the data view, in here you can see the coverage table. You can see the position table, and you can see the fact table PSI pop. Now, again, if you want to clean the data through Power Query, you can right click and then click or select Edit Query. So in this example, let me try to alter some of the columns. For instance, in this case, we want to change the column header to be position, and then this one is consistent with our column header in another table called position. And for instance, if you want to change some values here, you can right click and then replace value, or if you want to drill down, you can also do that. But for the meantime, let's just proceed with the alteration of that particular column, which is column name position. All right, so that's an example of how you format and clean your data. You can perform different cleaning uh, methods here, like for example, if you want to check if there are duplicates, uh, if you want to sort, or for instance, in this case, you want to replace values or replace errors, and if you want to duplicate these columns, or you want to remove this particular column if you don't want to use it, then you can do it using Power Query. So this is just an example. For the meantime, we don't have to alter much about this particular table. So let me close and apply. Uh, I assume that all of the columns and the rows here are okay. But again, let me remind you that data cleaning should be part of uh, what you normally do as a data analyst. So basically, before doing some analysis or even dealing deeply with your data, you need to make sure that the quality of your data is in top shape. Otherwise, you will have an incorrect analysis and interpretation. Okay, that's an example of how the data looks like. And then we go to the data model. Now, the data model here has no connection yet. So first, we need to establish which among the common columns exists in the fact table, which is this PSPOP, and then you have the position table, and then you have the coverage table. So in here, let me check that column that we have altered. We have position, and then we have position. Now I'm just showing you that you can alter the column name so that it will be consistent. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot relate columns with different names. So for instance, in this case, we know that this position is equivalent to this column name position in our fact table. Then we can establish a relationship. So yesterday we have discussed about cardinality. So in this case, the cardinality value is 1 to many, which means that the left table has some unique values in the position field or the column, and in the fact table it contains many values of this particular primary key value, which is position. So if you double click this one to check your relationship or to edit the relationship, okay, as you can see here, these are the unique values of the position, which is sometimes called our primary key, and this one is the foreign key in our fact table. So as you have observed here, there are multiple values here that exist in several rows in this particular table. All right. So another thing that I want to show is when you create a relationship of a column, even if they have different names. For instance, this one has a different name, so school coverage, and then this one is coverage. This is deliberately done by example so that I can show you that regardless of the column names, you can relate this particular field or column of a dimension table to a fact table as long as they are related to each other. Okay, so with that, again, they have a one-to-many relationship, which means that on the left side, there are unique values in each row of this particular column school coverage. And on the right side in this table, when you double click this one, you can see that there are multiple values of this column coverage, while on the dimension table, you have unique values of the coverage or school slash coverage. Now, again, even if they don't have the same column name, they can still be related. All right. So with that, we have established our relationship and we have created our data model. Now let's proceed to creating calculated columns, and then later on I'll show you some examples of how you create measures, whether implicit or explicit measure. All right.